There are moments in life when everything feels unbearably heavy. It might be the loss of someone you love, the weight of financial struggles, or the painful feeling of being abandoned by the world. In those moments, you can't help but ask, why me? Do I even have the strength to go on? And yet, throughout history, there have been people who suffered just like you. They too lost. They too despaired. They too felt trapped in darkness. But from that very darkness, they found a light, not a miracle, but wisdom, compassion, and awakening. A light that not only transformed their, offering only a tiny lamp, yet leaving behind a legacy brighter than thousands of golden lights? Or a grieving mother, so broken she lost her mind, who eventually found peace in facing the harshest truth of all. These Buddhist stories are not just ancient tales. They are mirrors reflecting our own lives today. They may not erase your difficulties, but they can offer you a new way to see them. That suffering is not the end, but often the doorway to growth and liberation. If you are standing at the edge of despair, stay with me, because in the moments ahead, you will hear stories that can rekindle hope, give you strength, and remind you that, even in the darkest night, there is always a light waiting to be found. Buddhist stories of hope and inspiration for life's hardest times. In life, no one can escape those moments when it feels as if we have reached a dead end. Some collapse under the weight of a devastating loss. Some despair when all their efforts bring no result. Suffering. The stories from the time of the Buddha still echo today, not because they are ancient legends, but because they reveal timeless truths about human life. Suffering is inevitable, but within suffering lies the seed of awakening. Buddhist stories carry a unique power. They are not rigid or dogmatic, but alive and human. They are told through ordinary people facing extraordinary struggles. A murderer who found redemption in awakening. A grieving mother who discovered herself through unbearable loss. A famed courtesan, once seen only as a symbol of desire, who became an example of compassion and transformation. Each story acts like a mirror, reflecting both the suffering and the hidden strength within our own lives. Perhaps you are going through difficult days right. We will step into timeless stories to discover why people who seemed broken were able to rise again, why fates that looked tragic were transformed into shining examples, and why even in the deepest, or the quiet loneliness we carry inside. Yet it is when suffering knocks at our door that we are given a chance to look deeply into life and ask, what truly matters? The stories in this part will take you through lives that seemed broken or lost, only to reveal that within suffering lies a path toward wisdom and compassion. 1.1. Story 1. The Stranger Seeking a Way Out of Darkness. It was late afternoon on the plains of northern India, where the last rays of sunlight stretched across the golden fields of wheat. A young man named Aaron walked silently along a dusty road that led toward the city of Rajagaha. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights, and his calloused hands trembled as they clutched his robe. Inside him raged a storm, questions without answers, wounds from the past, and a despair that seemed to swallow what little light remained in his mind. Aaron had once been a small merchant in the city, but within a single year, he had lost everything. His father had died of illness, his wife had left him for a wealthier man, and his only son had been taken by a summer fever. His house and possessions slipped through his fingers like sand. Night he found himself burying his face in his hands, asking why life had been so cruel. A faint spark flickered inside him. If there is truly a path out of this darkness, I must try to find it. Small villages, where children played by the wells and farmers bent their backs under the scorching sun. They looked weary, yet their laughter carried a simple joy to live, a joy Aaron had long. Steady steps. Aaron felt he had found a beginning again. 1.2. Story 2. The Farmer in the Abandoned Field. That summer in Magadha, the heat was so fierce that the earth cracked open as if it wanted to. As the sun rose, Kiran abandoned his field. He trudged into the forest, his steps heavy as though shackled. A single thought consumed him. If life is nothing but suffering, what is the point of? Kiran, do you wish to escape all suffering in this life? Kiran burst into tears, pressing his forehead to the ground. Yes, master. I only wish for a life without loss, without sickness. And the farther he walked, the more his heart cracked open, for he realized suffering did not belong to him alone. That night, Kiran sat by a well. The wind from the barren fields carried the dry. The Buddha asking how to escape suffering, and a poor farmer standing in his barren field with nothing left but his calloused hands. These lives, though distant in time and place, are deeply familiar, for suffering does not recognize borders, nor wealth, nor status. Thousands of years ago, people in ancient India carried sorrows much like ours today: loss, poverty, loneliness. To the very heart of life, the truth that suffering is universal, and in understanding that truth, the seed of comfort begins to grow. When the first man came to ask the Buddha how to end suffering, he hoped for a hidden path, a magical answer that would erase his pain. Yet instead of giving him a direct solution, the Buddha listened, looked deeply, and allowed the man to see for himself the roots of his pain. The miracle lay not in immediate change of circumstance, but in the shift of consciousness. Suffering began to loosen its grip when he realized it was not an eternal chain. For the farmer Kiran, his journey to find a seed from someone untouched by suffering became a mirror of human existence. At first, he thought his misfortune was unique. But as he went door to door, listening to the grief of others, he discovered that no life was free of sorrow. Every person carried a wound. Every household had its emptiness. And in that realization, he stopped blaming fate and found a strange comfort. He was not alone. This is the beginning of the path out of suffering, not by erasing it, but by looking directly at it, accepting its presence, and learning to live with it in understanding. We often run from pain, drowning in distractions, work, relationships, pleasures. But only when we stop fleeing, when we face suffering with open eyes, does the journey of freedom begin. Suffering is like a door. It shuts out the light, making us believe we are trapped in darkness. But if we have the courage to touch it, we find there is always a handle, always a way to open into another space. No pain is permanently sealed. Only our hearts have yet to turn the key. The Buddha never promised that the path would be easy. He taught it as a process, a long inner journey, requiring mindfulness, patience, and courage. Like the farmer, who had to knock on many doors, hear many stories, and shed tears before grasping the shared truth of humanity. The road is not quick, but it leads to genuine relief. When we hear these stories, perhaps we still whisper inside, "But my pain is different." Who could ever understand it? That sense of being misunderstood isolates us. Yet if we open our hearts, we see that across the earth, countless others walk through the same shadows. That shared recognition does not erase pain, but it lightens the burden. To say every suffering holds a path of escape is not a promise of a tearless life. It means that each pain contains the seed of transformation, the potential for awakening. Those who lose loved ones may learn to treasure the present moment. Those who fail may discover the strength to rise again. Those in despair may find hope in knowing they are not alone. Each small step, when taken together, leads us out of the darkness. Imagine, if Kiran had not left his field to seek the Buddha, he might have ended his life in despair. If the man had not gathered the courage to ask for guidance, he would still be trapped in endless pain. Only with a first step, a question, a search, an action, does the door open. Suffering, then, is a teacher. It forces us to pause, to reflect, to ask what truly matters. No one desires pain, yet it is through pain that compassion, patience, and wisdom grow. A person untouched by sorrow may struggle to understand others, but one who has loss, some from betrayal, some from the impermanence of life itself. Yet no matter the source, each carries within it the seed of transformation. And it is through these stories that we will come to see, in every suffering, there is always a way out. Part 2. When the pain of losing loved ones strikes. Is there any sorrow greater than watching someone we love leave us forever? Whether through whispers of others no longer mattered. But one day, when the boy was just 2 years old, a sudden fever struck. The family panicked, calling every physician and trying every remedy. But nothing could stop the illness. Within days, the child grew weaker, and at last, closed his eyes in an eternal sleep. Kisa fell into an abyss of grief. She clung to her child's body, refusing to let anyone take him away. Relatives and neighbors tried to comfort her, urging her to allow burial, but she shook her head. To her, the boy was not dead. He was only sleeping. But Kisa could not believe, could not accept. Her heart, torn apart by loss, clung desperately to the fragile hope that somewhere, somehow, there must be a cure. Then someone told her, "Nearby lives a great teacher, known as the Buddha. He is full of compassion and wisdom. Perhaps he can help you." Clutching her son tightly, Kisa rushed to find the Buddha. Falling to her knees before him, she wept, "Lord, please save my child. Grant me a medicine that will bring him back to life." The Buddha looked at her for a long moment, his gaze filled not with judgment, but with deep. The seeds must come from a household where no one has ever died. Kisa's heart leapt with hope. She ran off, whispering to herself, "Just a handful of mustard seeds. How simple." She knocked at the first house. The woman there, moved by pity, offered her a bowl of mustard seeds. But Kisa asked, "Has anyone ever died in your family?" The woman lowered her eyes, tears falling. "My husband passed away 3 years ago." Kisa left in silence. She tried the second house, the third, the fourth. Everywhere, people had mustard seeds, but when she asked her question, the answer was always the same. Yes. Parents, spouses, children, loved ones, no family was untouched by death. From morning until dusk, Kisa wandered through the town, repeating the same question, hearing the same answer. By sunset, her legs were trembling, her arms heavy with the child she still carried. But heavier still was the truth beginning to dawn in her heart. As twilight fell, she sank down by the roadside. The sky glowed crimson as the sun dipped beneath the river's edge. Gazing at the tiny body in her arms, Kisa, at last, saw the truth she had so long denied. Death is part of life, and it spares no one. That night she returned to the Buddha, her frail body trembling, her eyes swollen but no longer wild. Laying down her child, she whispered, "Lord." Amara clung to her son, praying each night for the sickness to pass. Yet one morning, Ravi was struck with a burning fever, his eyes blazing, his breath shallow. She ran frantically from healer to healer, buying every herb, every remedy, but the sickness only deepened. Ravi grew weaker by the day, until one gray, rainy evening, he whispered, "Mother," and grew silent forever in her arms. Amara froze. Her heart felt torn apart, her breath caught in her chest. She clung to her child's lifeless body, wailing until her strength gave out. Neighbors pitied her, urging her to let them bury. She went from house to house, healer to healer, begging for help. Each time, the answer was the same. Some pitied her, some tried to reason with her, some shut their doors. But Amara heard nothing, except the voice inside her head. There must be someone, somewhere, with a cure. Days turned into weeks. Her feet cracked and bled. Her clothes hung in tatters, but her hollow eyes still burned. With desperate hope, she had forgotten food and rest, living only on the fragile belief that Ravi would awaken and smile again. One evening, beneath the crimson glow of sunset over the fields, she met a wandering hermit. Seeing the ragged woman clutching the stiff body of a child, he gently asked her story. Choking with grief, Amara poured out her heart. The hermit listened silently. She no longer wandered in search of medicine. She returned to her village, living quietly. Sometimes she gathered the children and told them stories beneath the same tree, her voice carrying a new, deeper tone. Ravi's laughter no longer rang out, but in Amara's heart, she knew it had not vanished. It had dissolved into the wind, into the rustling leaves, and into the gentle eyes of others who, like her, had known the pain of loss. 2.3. The meaning. Accepting impermanence helps heal pain. On the journey of human life, there is one truth that, whether we like it or not, we all must face. Impermanence. Everything we love, treasure, and cling to, whether it is people, possessions, or even this very body, will change, fade, and eventually leave us one day. When we do not understand or accept this truth, we resist, we cling, we struggle in vain. But once we realize it, once the heart can embrace impermanence as an essential part of existence, we begin the path of healing. The pain of losing a loved one is perhaps the harshest test that makes us see impermanence clearly. A child is born, we hold them, nurture them, witness their first smile, their first steps. And then, one day, through illness or accident, we are forced to see that same child lying lifeless in our arms. That emptiness feels like a bottomless pit that swallows all meaning of life. A mother, a father, a wife, a husband, when they lose someone they deeply love, they do not just lose a relationship, they lose a part of their own flesh and soul. That is why the stories in the Dead Children in Search of Medicine, searching for an escape from what cannot be escaped. For it is human instinct to resist loss, to deny the reality of death. We believe that with enough effort, enough faith, we can hold back the tide of life slipping away. Yet that path always leads to the same door, helplessness before impermanence. And yet, the paradox is this: only when we accept impermanence does the pain begin to soften. For pain does not come only from loss, it also comes from our resistance. When Ravi, or Kisa Gotami's child, closed their eyes, that was reality. But that reality became a crushing burden, a living hell, because the mother could not accept, could not let go. Every step she took, every door she knocked on, every tear she shed, was only to sustain the illusion that impermanence could be undone. And when that illusion shattered, the pain tore her heart apart. Accepting impermanence does not mean not feeling pain. On the contrary, the pain still remains, sharp and piercing, making us tremble when memories resurface. But within acceptance, there is a space where the pain can settle. When we stop resisting reality. Each evening, as the sun sank behind the distant mountains, people flocked to the temple carrying radiant lamps filled with fragrant oils. The great hall shimmered like a sky full of stars. But she placed her hands together, closed her eyes, and silently prayed that this small flame would shine, even for a moment. As the night wore on, a storm rose. Fierce winds howled, and rain poured down. One by one, the grand lamps sputtered and died, leaving behind only smoke and the stench of burnt oil. By morning, when the monks came to tidy the hall, they stopped in astonishment. Of all the extinguished lamps, only one still burned, the old woman's. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Wealthy merchants who had offered gilded lamps filled with the finest oils shook. People whispered that there must be a hidden miracle in her lamp. Yet the old woman simply knelt before the Buddha, tears filling her eyes. No one knew that throughout the long night, as the storm raged and other flames were snuffed out, she had sat there in silence, whispering to her little light, "Burn for me, for I have nothing else to offer." By dawn, her lamp still burned, and that flame, small yet enduring, imprinted itself into the memory of all who witnessed it, living on as a story retold through the ages. 3.2. Story 6. A handful of rice from empty hands. In a small village nestled in the dusty plains of northern India, there lived a young man named Arjun. His father had died when he was only 5, and his mother, frail and sickly, passed away not long after, leaving Arjun utterly alone in the world. From childhood, he survived by working for others, hauling water, gathering firewood, carrying loads at the market. His life was a long string of hunger and hardship, sometimes surviving only on a dry yam or a few scattered grains of rice. The villagers were used to seeing Arjun, thin, ragged, his clothes in tatters, his body smeared with dust. Yet in his deep, dark eyes, there was always a quiet gentleness, a silent endurance. He never cursed his fate, nor envied others. He simply lived day to day, accepting hunger as an inseparable part of his existence. One morning, a great piece of news spread through the village. The Buddha and his monks would soon pass through on their journey of teaching. The villagers were thrilled. Wealthy families prepared lavish meals. The rich ordered rare delicacies, and even the poor gathered rice, fruits, or flowers for the offering. Excitement filled the air. Everywhere people spoke of the chance to behold the enlightened one. Arjun listened quietly, his heart stirred by longing. He had never seen the Buddha, but the stories he heard had touched something deep within him. They said that to see the Buddha once was to feel one's heart calmed, as though drinking from a cool stream. But Arjun had nothing, no money, no possessions. At home, he owned only a cracked clay pot and a handful of dry rice grains. He thought to himself, Everyone has something to offer the Buddha. What about me? When he comes, shall I stand there with empty hands? That evening, after a long day of labor, Arjun sat before his clay pot. Inside was less than half a handful of rice, the only food left for tomorrow. If he cooked it, it would barely keep him alive through the morning. But if he offered it, he would have nothing left to eat. His stomach ached, his body trembled, yet his yearning to show devotion burned stronger than fear. Holding the pot in his arms, he wept, his tears soaking the hard, dry grains. At dawn, the sound of drums announced the monk's arrival. Villagers rushed to the roadside, carrying trays of offerings, their faces alight with reverence. Arjun too hurried out, clutching an old cloth that wrapped his tiny handful of rice. His heart pounded wildly, fear and shame gnawed at him. Others bring gold, cakes, fragrant flowers. Actions. The old woman offering her oil lamp, the poor young man giving a handful of rice. Such humble details are not merely anecdotes for illustration, but precious gems in the treasury of human wisdom. They compel us to pause and ask, what makes an action truly valuable? Is it the material itself, or is it the heart, the sincerity, the devotion poured into it? In life, people are often drawn to appearances. We tend to measure things by grandeur, to be impressed by what is large, luxurious, and glittering. A magnificent temple may give the illusion that merit lies in size and splendor. A lavish offering of gold and food might suggest that value lies in abundance. Yet, the Dharma reminds us that without sincerity, all such acts are but empty shells. A small oil lamp, lit with all the faith of a poor old woman, shines brighter than thousands of golden lamps lit only for display. A handful of coarse rice, given from the frail hands of a young man who owned nothing else, plants a seed far greater than any offering made from excess. The essence lies in sincerity. When we give with our whole heart, not to be recognized or praised, but to reveal the truth of who we are, the act itself becomes immense in meaning. In Buddhism, the mind is the root. All phenomena arise from it. A small gesture, born of genuine kindness, becomes a radiant light. Conversely, a grand gesture, driven by pride or the desire for fame, fades like a shadow and leaves nothing lasting behind. Imagine, in today's world, how easily people spend fortunes on charity, but often with cameras and applause in tow, turning compassion into performance. At the same time, a poor mother who breaks her only loaf of bread to share with a hungry child by the roadside, unknown, unrecorded, creates an act of far greater worth. That worth is not measured in money, but in the depth of true compassion within her heart. This truth also reveals something deeper. Everything material is fleeting. Wealth, possessions, fame, all of it will pass. What endures is the heart we pour into each action. A single seed of kindness, sown sincerely, can grow into a vast forest of merit. But acts born of vanity vanish like dust in the wind. Of course, sincerity does not mean carelessness. It means bringing our full presence into even the smallest acts. Compassion is wholly different from a meal given for recognition. The same action, yet the heart behind it defines its meaning. In our own lives, we see this truth reflected again and again. Chapter filled with hope. 4.1, Story 7. Angulimala, from killer to enlightened disciple. In a remote forest, where ancient trees stood closely together, birdsong echoed, and streams trickled over stones, there lived a man named Angulimala. His life had been shadowed by darkness from an early age. Born into a wealthy but distrustful family, Angulimala was once a bright and agile student. Yet jealousy and malice from his peers gradually drew him onto the wrong path. Lies, slander, and ill intentions caused him to lose faith in people and the world around him. From a clever student, Angulimala slowly became a bloodthirsty figure. In his mind, survival and revenge eclipsed all reason. Step by step, he fashioned a necklace of fingers from his victims, each ring symbolizing a life. At their head was the Buddha, his gaze calm and penetrating, yet without any trace of threat or force. Angulimala, hiding as usual, prepared to seize his next victim. But when he saw the Buddha, something unusual stirred within him. For the first time, it was not fear or anger, but a strange feeling, an unfamiliar sense of peace emanating from the Buddha's eyes, as if they saw directly into his heart. It is said that Angulimala ran after the Buddha through the forest, but no matter how fast he ran, the Buddha walked steadily, never rushing, never fleeing, never glancing back. Over time, Angulimala's heartbeat slowed. A part of him realized that the power he had wielded to harm and terrorize brought only emptiness. Finally, exhausted and near collapse, Angulimala saw the Buddha stop. His eyes remained gentle, full of compassion. Angulimala trembled, feeling his rage and fear dissolve in a strange instant. He fell to his knees, powerless to act. Only emptiness remained, but it was accompanied by a pure spark of hope. Without judgment, the Buddha smiled and said, "Stop, Angulimala. Abandon the path of wrongdoing. There is still a way forward if you are willing to. Follow the light." In that moment, Angulimala felt salvation. For so long, he had known only hatred and violence, but before this boundless calm and compassion, a sense of relief spread through him. He knelt, crying. Each tear seemed to wash away the layers of darkness clinging to his soul. The man who once spread terror now sat in silence, experiencing inner peace for the first time. The Buddha did not need to use force or threats. Simply through boundless compassion, he allowed Angulimala to see himself, to recognize the emptiness of violence, and to glimpse the light of another path. Afterward, Angulimala followed the Buddha and became a true disciple. He learned to live with compassion, to replace violence with kindness. His past misdeeds gradually gave way to calmness and efforts to sow seeds of good. Step by step, the former killer became a living example of transformation, proving that no matter how deep one has fallen into wrongdoing, a path to light and spiritual rebirth always exists. The villagers in surrounding regions, hearing Angulimala's story, were both astonished and inspired. They saw that forgiveness and compassion could save a soul and ripple outward, easing fear and hatred in society. The fire of violence could be extinguished, but the light of compassion would never fade. From then on, the story of Angulimala, from darkness to enlightened disciple, was retold as a powerful testament to the human capacity for spiritual rebirth and life transformation, regardless of how dark the past may be. 4.2. Story 8. Sunita, from street sweeper to bhikkhuni. In a small village by the Ganges River lived a girl named Sunita. She was born into extreme poverty, where her early life was intertwined with hardship and social scorn. Her family's work was to collect and dispose of waste, a job looked down upon, considered lowly and shameful. Every day, Sunita faced contemptuous glances, mocking laughter, and social rejection. Her childhood was filled with struggle, living amid foul odors and loneliness, yet her heart constantly longed for a different life, a chance to change her fate. Despite her circumstances, Sunita showed intelligence, sensitivity, and kindness from a young age. While other children played freely, she could only watch from afar, yet her desire to learn and understand the world never. Sunita quietly followed from a distance. She saw wealthy villagers offering gifts, fresh flowers, delicious fruits, while she had nothing but her sincere heart and clean hands. When she looked at the Buddha, she felt a strange energy, not the power or grandeur of a ruler, but gentle calmness, absolute serenity, and compassion. She decided to step forward, though her heart pounded and her hands shook. Sunita knelt before the Buddha, shy and embarrassed, unable to look directly into his eyes. She whispered that she had nothing to offer, but the Buddha showed no disdain or rejection. Instead, he gazed at her with infinite compassion. He smiled and said, "Sunita, you do not need material things to prove your heart. Your sincerity and determination are enough to walk the path of liberation." Those words struck Sunita like thunder in her heart. For the first time, she understood that a person's value is not in their status, occupation, or material possessions, but in their heart and intentions. She decided to leave her work, knowing that doing so would expose her to even more ridicule and hardship. Sunita followed the Buddha, learning, practicing, and training her mind and body, eventually becoming a fully ordained bhikkhuni, a nun devoted to mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. Sunita's story spread throughout the region, leaving people astonished and moved. A girl once scorned by society, living in filth and isolation, had become a remarkable symbol of transformation. The villagers realized that even those labeled as lowly could rise, find the light, and inspire others. From her days as a street sweeper, Sunita now walked confidently, her eyes shining, her heart filled with compassion. She was no longer a forgotten girl, but a living testament to the power of determination, sincerity, and the ability to change one's life. Her story reminds us that no matter one's past or social status, if a person perseveres and acts with heart, the light of Dharma will illuminate the path, offering spiritual rebirth and life transformation. Sunita's story continues to be shared today as a vivid example that no one is too lowly. Sometimes, those in the humblest positions learn the most valuable lessons about the worth of the heart, the true meaning of life, and the path to reclaim oneself. For point 3, meaning, it is never too late to turn around. Life is never lacking in moments of mistakes, missteps, and decisions that leave regret behind. People often think that once they have committed too many wrongs, once their actions have plunged their lives into darkness, there is no longer a chance to make amends or start anew. Yet Buddhist stories, like those of Angulimala and Sunita, reveal a profound truth. Immersed in wrongdoing, despair, or social prejudice, Angulimala was a murderer who spread terror. Sunita was a girl scorned by society, living in the filth of a lowly occupation. Yet both found light through a spark of compassion, the Buddha's teaching, or the opportunity to recognize their inner value. This emphasizes that change is not beyond human reach, but a journey that begins within the mind and with determination. No one can deny the power of a turning point. The moment a person realizes the emptiness in their way of life, regrets the past, or senses the light of a different possessions, but in sincerity and heart. These moments of realization open the door for them to step into a new life, to transform from within, and to become an inspiration to others. Turning around is not merely about abandoning harmful actions or regretting the past. It is a profound spiritual process. It requires courage to confront oneself, to look directly into the darkness within, and to recognize that no matter how dark the past, there is always a path toward light. This is why Buddhist masters emphasize that each day is a new opportunity for practice, for correcting mistakes, and for cultivating compassion and wisdom. The journey of turning around is also inseparable from forgiveness, both of oneself and of others. When Angulimala abandoned his glances, but instead sowed seeds of compassion within herself and her community, forgiveness frees one from the chains of hatred, guilt, or inferiority, making it essential to the journey of lost. Everything can step into the light if they dare to face themselves and put their heart into each step. Furthermore, the significance of turning around is reflected in its ripple effect on the community. When an individual changes, their compassion and wisdom extend beyond themselves, affecting others. Angulimala, once a murderer, became a holy disciple, showing others who had faltered compassion throughout the community. Ultimately, the profound lesson is that every moment can be a new beginning. There is no need to wait for perfect circumstances or favorable conditions. By the past so tightly that they cannot find the light. The stories of Angulimala and Sunita are living proof that spiritual rebirth and personal transformation are always possible. By opening one's heart, recognizing inner value, and walking with determination, one can overcome darkness, find light, and create miraculous turning points in life. This act of turning around not only changes individual lives, but also inspires, plants seeds of kindness and compassion, and gradually makes the world a better place. Part 5. When facing injustice and unfairness. In life, no one can completely avoid moments of misunderstanding, being placed in unfair situations, or suffering injustice from others. Such moments can easily shake one's faith, provoke anger, or even lead to despair. Yet in Buddhism, stories of those who have endured injustice reveal that even in the deepest unfairness, there is always an opportunity to find peace, wisdom, and liberation. This section will share inspiring stories where resilient hearts transformed their suffering into valuable lessons, guiding them toward the light. 5.1. Story 9. When the Buddha was slandered and Lanes, his steps slow yet confident, drawing admiring glances from the townspeople. Whispers spread about his gentle demeanor and the wisdom radiating from every gesture. Yet, amidst this glow, stories to undermine his reputation. Rumors circulated from narrow streets to bustling markets, causing uncertainty and suspicion among some people. Those who had never met the Buddha began to look at him with distance, disdain, and even hostility. During a teaching session in a wide garden, with the wind rustling and petals falling, the Buddha sensed the coldness in the eyes and harshness in the words directed at him. Stones were thrown, shouts and insults rang out, testing the calm of any human being. They called him a fraud, a deceiver, unworthy of admiration. Yet the Buddha walked, wanting to respond. But the Buddha stopped them, looking at them with gentle eyes, saying, "These words cannot harm my mind if I do not give them attention." Anger and hatred only increase suffering within oneself. His words were not theoretical lessons, but a living demonstration of emotional control and the insight into the nature of suffering. A woman nearby, having heard the malicious others say, "Truth does not come from others' words, but from awareness and personal experience." His words brought tears to her eyes, making her realize that faith and inner peace cannot be shaken by reality. They saw that despite the insults and abuse, the Buddha maintained his serenity, radiating compassion and wisdom. His attitude caused some skeptics to reconsider, gradually seeing the truth in his actions rather than in rumors. That afternoon, as the sunset bathed the rooftops and rice fields in golden light, the townspeople witnessed the Buddha leaving the garden, free from resentment or anger, emanating peace from every step and glance. The slander and abuse, however loud for a day, could not diminish the example of compassion, wisdom, and calm. Through this event, people realized that true strength lies not in retaliation or argument, but in maintaining a tranquil mind amidst injustice, seeing through the nature of suffering, and not letting slander shake one's to endure injustice without losing character or wisdom. Those who had once doubted began to seek him out, not because of rumors, but because of the direct experience and the compassionate light. Falsely accused a monk. On a bright morning in the Kosala kingdom, sunlight streamed through the palace windows, reflecting off the intricately carved walls and polished marble pillars. In the grand hall, the majestic throne radiated authority, where the king sat, his eyes filled with suspicion and a hint of coldness. That day, he had heard many rumors about a young monk renowned for his profound wisdom, compassion, and influence over the people. This fame made the king uneasy, fearing that his own authority might be threatened. Courtiers and attendants stood along the sides, not daring to move or look directly at the king. The young monk's footsteps echoed softly on the palace floor, emanating calm and solemnity, contrasting with the king's unease. As the monk, some fearful, unsure how to react. Yet the monk stood tall, eyes bright and serene, showing neither fear nor confusion. He understood that all accusations were a test, and reacting angrily or arguing would not resolve anything, but create more suffering for himself and others. The king continued his interrogation, ordering officials to gather evidence to prove the claims. Throughout the morality and duty, and had never acted to disrespect the king. These words were like a gentle breeze entering the king's mind, causing him to hesitate. The monk's bright eyes and unwavering calm made the king question whether the false accusations were true. Was the monk's respect and influence among the people built on truth or mere rumors? The tension in the grand hall became almost unbearable. All eyes were on the monk, waiting for his reaction. He remained composed, untouched by any of the accusations. He gently reminded everyone of the Buddha's teaching, true inner peace does. Saw that the people and courtiers gradually fell silent, realizing that true value lies not in false accusations or imposed authority, but in action and genuine virtue. In the following days, the monk continued teaching and guiding the people, helping them understand how to face injustice and adversity in life. The king observed from afar, recognizing the monk's inner strength and calm, becoming a widely shared tale. People saw that slander, no matter how loud for a day or a week, could not overpower a strong, virtuous soul. In fact, the injustice highlighted the monk's true character, making his wisdom and compassion shine even brighter. The monk continued to visit villages and towns, assisting the people in understanding inner peace. His actions radiated warmth and, realizing that inner strength surpasses any false accusation. Life in the palace returned to its usual rhythm, but everyone remembered the story of the monk who faced false accusations without anger, without resentment, only with calm, wisdom, and compassion radiating from him. It became a vivid testament that injustice cannot diminish the value of inner virtue, and that a serene mind is the most powerful tool to overcome false accusations in life. 5.3. Meaning, when the mind is at peace, no one can take away your inner calm. In life, people often face situations of injustice. A peaceful mind is considered the foundation for all correct actions and clear wisdom. When the mind is not influenced by slander or the unjust actions of others, one realizes that all external phenomena are impermanent, temporary, and beyond complete control. Inner peace does not come from changing or controlling others, but from understanding, awareness, and cultivating one's own mind. The story of the monk falsely accused by the king clearly illustrates this principle. Despite being treated unjustly, the monk maintained calm and clarity, refusing to let any words or wrongful actions disturb his mind. This composure not only protected him from suffering, but also allowed those around him to recognize his true value, gradually shifting their attitudes toward him. A peaceful mind does not mean indifference or passively accepting injustice. On the contrary, it allows a person to face reality mindfully, recognizing the impermanence of all things and choosing responses wisely. A person with inner peace knows when to act, when to remain silent, and how to respond without being driven by negative emotions. This inner strength, emphasized in Buddhist, such as the monk facing the king's false accusations, serve as a mirror, prompting reflection. Are we allowing others or circumstances to control our mind? When facing injustice, do we react with, leading to poor choices and potentially harmful karma? The monk's story demonstrates that even before the highest authority of the kingdom, inner peace and composure triumph over slander and external compassion. When one is not swayed by anger or resentment, they can see others with understanding and empathy. In the story, although falsely accused, the monk held no hatred toward the king or courtiers, and this attitude gradually changed the perceptions of those around him. Compassion benefits both others and strengthens inner peace, creating a positive cycle between wisdom, compassion, calmness rather than anger. With regular practice, inner peace becomes a habit, and one realizes that no matter how harsh the circumstances or unjust the actions of others, the mind can remain undisturbed and serene. In summary, the story of the monk falsely accused by the king illustrates a key Buddhist principle. Inner peace is true strength, and when a person maintains a peaceful mind, slander or pressures cannot touch the mind when it is properly nurtured and protected. With this understanding, anyone facing injustice or false accusations can find tranquility, view events with wisdom and compassion, and continue living a life of peace, unaffected by external circumstances. Inner peace is not merely a mental state. It is a tool for living a meaningful, wise. There are moments in life when everything feels unbearably heavy. It might be the loss of someone you love, the weight of financial struggles, or the painful feeling of being abandoned by the world. In those moments, you can't help but ask, why me? Do I even have the strength to go on? And yet, throughout history, there have been people who suffered just like you. They too lost. They too despaired. They too felt trapped in darkness. But from that very darkness, they found a light, not a miracle, but wisdom, compassion, and awakening. A light that not only transformed their offering only a tiny lamp, yet leaving behind a legacy brighter than thousands of golden lights, or a grieving mother, so broken she lost her mind, who eventually found peace in facing the harshest truth of all. These Buddhist stories are not just ancient tales. They are mirrors reflecting our own lives today. They may not erase your difficulties, but they can offer you a new way to see them. That suffering is not the end, but often the doorway to growth and liberation. If you are standing at the edge of despair, stay with me, because in the moments ahead, you will hear stories that can rekindle hope, give you strength, and remind you that, even in the darkest night, there is always a light waiting to be found. Buddhist stories of hope and inspiration for life's hardest times. In life, no one can escape those moments when it feels as if we have reached a dead end. Some collapse under the weight of a devastating loss. Some despair when all their efforts bring no result. Suffering. The stories from the time of the Buddha still echo today, not because they are ancient legends, but because they reveal timeless truths about human life. Suffering is inevitable, but within suffering lies the seed of awakening. Buddhist stories carry a